Hi, my name's Laura Robb. I chose to do this book for my study. This is Ann Judson. She was one of the very first American female missionaries to leave America and head across overseas as a missionary. Her and her husband aimed for India and through various circumstances ended up in Burma. Burma was basically unreached. They had no gospel or scriptures in their language other than that which one person ahead of them had been working on, who was William Carey's son, Felix. They arrived in Burma, and Anne's husband worked tirelessly on language acquisition, the written language, and then translating the New Testament and other key documents into Burmese. One of the things that I was really struck by Anne was her diligence for herself in reading God's word and studying it, using others' expertise. Through that really grew her heart for mission, and especially for females, for girls, to know who Jesus was, and also to have education. Another key event for them was some other missionaries moving out to be near them in the same place, and also having access to a printing press. Communication was something that really struck me as I read this book. So the advantage of having the language translated into Burmese is obvious, but without it being able to be read and produced en masse for people to be able to access, obviously it's really limited. So the arrival of a printing press nearby for them to be able to use was really integral in this, people being intrigued by Jesus more and more, and again seeing that first convert. The other thing about communication that I was really struck by was just how in the early 1800s, how isolated they were. The amount of time it took to get letters backwards and forwards from home, how rare it was that they actually got there, what a long time it took. I was really struck by that. The other thing I was really struck by was how ill Anne was for so much of her life. She did have 3 children. One was stillborn, one died at 18 months, and one died about 2, but that was after Anne herself had died. But she suffered throughout her life with all sorts of illnesses. The other thing that forms a large part of the book is during her husband's imprisonment during the Burmese War, when, because they were white, they were assumed to be British spies. Burma was at war with Britain. And so he was kept in truly hideous conditions and was due to be executed. However, Anne was absolutely persistent and belligerent, maybe, in how she kept going to the people in charge to keep Adoniram and some of the other missionaries going and alive and in conditions which they could survive. Sadly, that whole period during the war and her husband's imprisonment really took its toll on Anne's health. One of the things that she says in her correspondence, her diary, towards the end of that time of her husband's imprisonment is basically, was this all a waste of time? That's what people kind of say to her. What are you doing all that time with the, trying to survive prison and your health and all that you've risked, but you haven't seen anyone be saved. And so why? What did you do? Is it a waste of time? Anne is convinced that God, of course, is in charge, and that nothing is a waste of time if we're doing it trusting that he is Lord and sovereign. And I found that a really encouraging part of her story, that even though maybe looking in, it looks like they achieved so little and just survived out there for such a large amount of time, Anne is able to say it's not a waste. Things for me to take away from Anne are definitely a passion for the word, to sit in God's word, to love God's word, and to let our knowledge of God's word affect our hearts, not just our heart before him, but our heart for others and for whether they know who Jesus really is. I think she was a pretty inspirational woman. And when you add that to it being in the 1800s, I am really glad that I chose this book. It's been helpful.